The tattoo burned. Not literally. Though sometimes, late at night when Sebastian Crow couldn't sleep, he swore he could feel phantom heat radiating from the small compass rose inked on his left wrist. The needle had hurt like hell 15 years ago, but the pain of getting it was nothing compared to the ache that followed when she vanished 3 days later. He stared at it now under the harsh fluorescent lights of the roadside diner, his Armani suit completely out of place among the cracked vinyl booths and laminated menus. His driver had taken a wrong turn somewhere outside Portland, and Sebastian's phone had died 20 minutes ago. The irony wasn't lost on him. A man who owned half the tech companies on the West Coast, stranded without GPS in a town that looked like it had been forgotten by time itself. Coffee. He didn't look up. Black. Strong. The waitress moved away, and Sebastian returned to the contract on the table, though he hadn't absorbed a single word in the last 10 minutes. The merger. The biggest deal of his career. $7 billion hanging in the balance. And all he could think about was a girl with wild auburn hair and eyes like sea glass who had traced this exact tattoo with her fingertip and whispered, "Now you can't forget me." No matter what. He hadn't. God, he'd tried. The coffee cup appeared in his peripheral vision, and he reached for it automatically. "Thanks. Where did you get that tattoo?" Sebastian's hand froze halfway to his mouth. The voice was young, uncertain, threaded with something that sounded like recognition. He looked up slowly, his practiced boardroom composure slipping for just a fraction of a second. The waitress was maybe 20, 21. Dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, uniform a size too big, name tag that read Ruby, pinned slightly crooked. But it was her eyes that made his heart stop mid-beat. Sea glass. That impossible shade of blue-green that he'd only ever seen once before in his life. "What did you say?" His voice came out rougher than intended. Ruby's face had gone white. She was staring at his wrist like she'd seen a ghost. "That tattoo." The compass rose with the broken arrow through the north point. Where did you get it?" Sebastian's pulse thundered in his ears. No one knew about the arrow. It was too small, too detailed to see unless you were inches away. Unless you knew exactly what to look for. "Why do you want to know?" He couldn't breathe. The diner suddenly felt too small, too hot. Ruby's hand trembled as she set down the coffee pot. She glanced toward the kitchen, then back at him, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because my mother has the exact same one. In the exact same place." The contract slipped from Sebastian's fingers. 15 years. 15 years of unanswered questions, of private investigators who found nothing, of waking up in the middle of the night wondering if Iris Thorne was alive or dead. 15 years of telling himself she'd simply chosen to walk away, that the note she'd left, "I'm sorry, forget me," had been the truth. But she'd never removed the tattoo. And now this girl, this waitress with Iris's eyes, was standing in front of him asking about a design that only 2 people in the world had. "What's your mother's name?" Sebastian stood, the booth creaking. He was vaguely aware that other diners were starting to notice, but he didn't care. Nothing mattered except the answer to this question. Ruby backed up a step, her expression shifting from confusion to something like fear. I shouldn't have said anything. Forget it. What's her name?" He didn't mean to sound aggressive, but the words came out hard, desperate. "Sir, I need to." "Is she here?" "In this town." "I really can't." "Is her name Iris?" Ruby's sharp inhale was all the confirmation he needed. The diner tilted. Somewhere, a plate shattered. Sebastian's vision tunneled, and for a moment, he was 23 again, standing in the apartment they'd shared, holding a note that didn't explain anything. He'd called everyone. Her friends said she'd never mentioned leaving. Her landlord said someone had cleared out her old place overnight. It was like she'd been erased. And now, 15 years later, here was a girl with her eyes asking about their tattoo. "How old are you?" The question came out mechanical, but Sebastian's mind was racing, calculating, connecting dots he'd never allowed himself to see. Ruby's face confirmed everything before she even opened her mouth. 20, 21 in March. No. Sebastian's legs gave out, and he sank back into the booth. 21 in March. Which meant she'd been born 9 months after Iris disappeared. 9 months after their last night together, when they talked about the future like it was something they owned, when she'd laughed and said, "What if we're not ready? What if everything changes?" He'd kissed her and promised nothing would ever change. And 3 days later, she was gone. She was pregnant. He set it to the table, to himself, to the universe that had just cracked open and rearranged itself. She was pregnant, and she didn't tell me. When he looked up, Ruby's eyes were filled with tears. "She made me promise never to look for you," Ruby whispered. "She said you were dangerous, that you'd destroy everything if you knew." Sebastian felt something in his chest shatter and reform simultaneously. Dangerous. Him. The man who'd loved Iris Thorne more than his own ambition, who'd walked away from his family's expectations to be with her, who'd spent 15 years unable to love anyone else because she'd taken his heart when she left. "Where is she?" His voice cracked. "Ruby, where is your mother?" The girl looked toward the kitchen again, and this time, Sebastian saw it. The panic, the conflict, the terrible weight of a secret she'd carried her whole life. "She's dying," Ruby said, and the words hung in the air like a death sentence. "Stage 4. The doctors say she has maybe 2 months." And just like that, Sebastian Crow's entire world collapsed and rebuilt itself in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Hey beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having an incredible day wherever you are in the world. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. Are you team coffee or team tea today? And hey, if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, do it now. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this story ends. Sebastian's hands were shaking. The Sebastian Crow who had built a tech empire from nothing, who had stared down venture capitalists and hostile takeover attempts without flinching, who had once fired 12 executives in a single afternoon without breaking a sweat. That man had vanished. In his place sat someone he barely recognized, someone whose entire foundation had just been ripped away. 2 months, he repeated, and the words felt like gravel in his throat. Ruby wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing mascara across her cheek. She was still standing, still holding the coffee pot like a shield. "I shouldn't have said anything. She's going to kill me. She made me promise. Take me to her." "What? No, I can't." "Ruby." Sebastian stood again, slower this time, keeping his voice measured even though everything inside him was screaming. "I've spent 15 years thinking she chose to leave me. 15 years wondering if I did something wrong, if I wasn't enough, if she was even alive. And now you're telling me she's been here the whole time? That she was carrying my child when she disappeared? That she's dying?" His voice cracked on the last word, and he didn't care who heard it. The diner had gone quiet. An elderly couple 3 booths down were pretending not to stare. The cook had appeared in the kitchen window, watching with undisguised interest. Ruby's resolve wavered. He could see it in the way her shoulders sagged, in the way her grip on the coffee pot loosened. She had Iris's eyes, but she also had something else, a softness around the edges that her mother had lost somewhere along the way. Iris had been all sharp angles and fierce determination, a girl who'd grown up fighting for everything she had. This girl looked like she'd been protected, loved, sheltered from the storms that had clearly battered her mother. "She never told you about me," Sebastian said quietly. It wasn't a question. Ruby shook her head. "Not your name. Not until right now, when I saw the tattoo." She paused, glancing around the diner. Can we not do this here?" Sebastian threw $300 bills on the table, enough to cover the coffee and buy a few minutes of privacy. "Lead the way." They ended up behind the diner, in a gravel lot where the staff took smoke breaks. Ruby didn't smoke, but she pulled a cigarette from a crushed pack in her apron pocket anyway, lighting it with trembling hands. She took one drag, coughed, and stubbed it out immediately. "I don't actually smoke," she admitted. "I just needed something to do with my hands." Sebastian leaned against the brick wall, forcing himself to breathe, to think, to not lose his mind completely. "Tell me everything." "I don't know everything." "She won't talk about it." Ruby crossed her arms, defensive now, protecting her mother even as she betrayed her secrets. "All I know is what I've pieced together over the years. We moved around a lot when I was little. Never stayed in one place more than 6 months. She worked 3 jobs sometimes, always under different names. I didn't even know my real birthday until I was 12 and needed my birth certificate for school." Sebastian's jaw tightened. Different names. She was hiding. From you, apparently. There was an edge to Ruby's voice now, a flicker of resentment. "She said you were powerful, that your family would take me away if they knew I existed, that you'd use lawyers and money and influence to erase her completely." The accusation hung between them like poison. "That's not," Sebastian started, then stopped. "Because wasn't it? His father, Edward Crow, was a man who valued legacy above all else. When Sebastian had brought Iris home for dinner that one disastrous time, Edward had taken one look at her thrift store dress and borrowed jewelry and made his opinion crystal clear. "She's not one of us, son. Have your fun, but don't be stupid about it." Sebastian had left that night and never looked back. Cut off his trust fund, started his first company with money he'd saved from summer internships, built everything from scratch just to prove he didn't need the Crow name or fortune. But Iris had been there for that dinner. She'd heard the way Edward spoke to the staff, seen the casual cruelty in how he dismissed anyone beneath his station. She'd been quiet the whole drive home, and when Sebastian had promised her it didn't matter what his father thought, she'd just smiled sadly and said, "Money always matters, Sebastian. People like your father make sure of that. My family," he had to force the words out. "They're not good people, but I'm not them. I never was." "She said you'd say that." Ruby's voice was softer now, less hostile. "She said you were different, that you were the only person who ever made her feel safe." She paused. "But she also said safety was an illusion, that the moment your family found out about me, they'd turn you into someone else entirely." Sebastian felt something twist in his chest. "So she ran. To protect you. To protect both of us, I think." Ruby's eyes were distant now, seeing something he couldn't. "She worked herself to death, trying to keep us hidden. We lived in motels, cheap apartments, once in a car for 3 months. She never complained, never explained, just kept moving, kept working, kept me fed and clothed and in school." Her voice broke. "And now she's in a hospital bed at Mercy General, barely conscious most days, and I still don't know the whole truth. I don't know why she really left. I don't know if she ever stopped loving you. I don't know anything except that she's dying, and she made me promise, swear on my life, that I would never look for the man with the compass tattoo." Sebastian's vision blurred. 15 years. 15 years Iris had spent running, hiding, sacrificing everything to keep their daughter safe from a threat that may or may not have been real. 15 years he'd spent building an empire, making more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, sleeping in penthouses and private jets while the woman he loved worked 3 jobs and lived in her car. "Take me to her," he said again. "Please." Ruby studied him for a long moment, and he wondered what she saw. A stranger? A threat? Or maybe, buried beneath the expensive suit and carefully constructed armor, the man her mother had loved enough to run from. Finally, she nodded. "My shift ends in 20 minutes. Mercy General is 15 minutes from here." She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. "But I'm warning you right now. If you hurt her, if you upset her, if you do anything that makes her last days worse than they already are, I will destroy you. I don't care how rich you are." Sebastian almost smiled. There it was, Iris's fire, burning in her daughter's eyes. "Fair enough," he said. "But Ruby, I need you to understand something." She looked up from her phone. "I never stopped loving her," Sebastian said quietly. "Not for a single day in 15 years. Whatever she thought she was protecting you from, whatever threat she imagined, I would have burned the world down before letting anyone hurt either of you." Ruby's expression softened, just slightly. "Tell her that," she said. "Not me." The hospital smelled like antiseptic and despair. Sebastian followed Ruby through the maze of corridors, his Italian leather shoes squeaking against the linoleum. Mercy General was nothing like the private medical facilities he was used to, the kind where you waited in rooms that looked like hotel suites and doctors knew your name before you arrived. This was the real world, the one Iris had been living in while he'd been insulated by wealth he'd built trying to forget her. "She's on the 4th floor," Ruby said, not looking back. "Oncology ward. They moved her from ICU last week when..." She trailed off. "When what?" "When there was nothing left to do but wait." The elevator ride lasted an eternity. Sebastian caught his reflection in the scratched metal doors, pale, drawn, looking every one of his 38 years. When had he gotten so old? When had the lines around his eyes deepened? When had the silver started threading through his dark hair? 15 years ago, he'd been young, reckless, in love with a girl who made him believe the world could be different. Now he was a stranger to himself. The doors opened. Ruby led him past the nurse's station, where a tired-looking woman in scrubs glanced up and nodded in recognition. No one stopped them. No one asked who Sebastian was or why he was here. In this place, visitors were just temporary witnesses to inevitable endings. Room 447. Ruby paused outside, her hand on the door. She's probably asleep, she whispered. The morphine knocks her out most of the day now. But even if she's awake, Sebastian, she looks different. The cancer, the chemo, it changed her. I don't care. I'm serious. This isn't the woman you remember. Sebastian met Ruby's eyes, Iris's eyes, and felt something fierce and protective rise in his chest. I've loved her through 15 years of nothing. I'll love her through this too. Ruby's expression cracked, just for a moment, and he saw the terrified girl beneath the brave exterior. The girl who was about to lose her mother. The girl who'd carried a secret her entire life and was now watching it explode. Okay, she breathed. Okay. She opened the door. The room was dim, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. Machines beeped softly, monitoring vitals that Sebastian suspected were declining with each passing day. And there, in the bed, so small she barely made a shape beneath the white sheets. Iris. His lungs forgot how to work. Ruby was right. She looked different. The wild auburn hair was gone, replaced by a wispy silver cap growing back after chemo. Her face was gaunt, cheekbones sharp against paper-thin skin. The vibrant, fierce girl who'd challenged him to be better, to want more than his family's money and expectations. She was buried somewhere beneath this fragile shell. But when he moved closer, when he saw the compass rose tattoo on her left wrist, still visible against the 4-line and hospital bracelet, something inside him broke open. It was her. After everything, after all these years, it was her. Mom. Ruby moved to the bedside, her voice gentle. Mom, are you awake? Iris stirred. A small sound, barely human. Her eyes fluttered open, those impossible sea glass eyes that hadn't changed, that were exactly as Sebastian remembered them. And then she saw him. Every machine in the room seemed to go haywire at once. The heart monitor screamed. Iris's eyes went wide, her breath catching in a gasp that turned into a coughing fit. Ruby lunged for the water cup, but Iris was already trying to sit up, trying to speak, trying to. No. The word came out as a rasp. No, 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 Ruby, what did you do? Mom, please. Get him out. Iris's voice cracked, raw with panic and 15 years of grief. Get him out, get him out. Sebastian's heart shattered. He'd imagined this moment 1,000 different ways over the years. In some versions, she ran to him. In others, she slapped him. But he'd never imagined this. The pure terror in her eyes, the way she looked at him like he was a threat instead of the man who'd once been her entire world. Iris. His voice came out strangled. Please. I'm not here to hurt you. You can't be here. They'll find out. They'll take her. Another coughing fit, this one worse. Ruby was trying to calm her, pressing the water cup to her lips, but Iris kept fighting, kept trying to rise from the bed like she could physically push him away. A nurse burst through the door. What's going on? Her vitals are. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. No. Sebastian didn't move. Not until she hears me. Security. Please. He locked eyes with Iris, and for just a moment, he saw past the fear to something else. Something that looked like longing, like regret, like love that had never quite died. Iris. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes, and if you want me gone, I'll leave. But after 15 years, I deserve to know why. The machines were still screaming. The nurse had a phone in her hand. Ruby was crying now, standing between them like she didn't know which parent to protect. And then Iris spoke, so quietly he almost missed it. Because your father found me. The room went silent except for the beeping monitors. Sebastian felt the floor tilt. What? 3 days after we got the tattoos. Iris's voice was barely a whisper now, all the fight draining out of her. He showed up at my apartment. Alone. No lawyers, no security. Just him and an envelope. An envelope, Sebastian repeated numbly. Iris's hand moved to her stomach. A protective gesture that Sebastian suddenly understood had been practiced for 21 years. He said he knew I was pregnant. He had a doctor's report, Sebastian, from a clinic I'd visited 2 days earlier. He had everything. She looked at Ruby, then back at him, and her eyes filled with tears. He said I had 2 choices. Take the money and disappear, or he'd make sure I lost everything. My job, my apartment, my family. He knew about my little sister, knew she needed a heart transplant, knew exactly how much it cost. Her voice broke. He said if I told you, if I ever contacted you again, he'd make sure neither of us lived long enough to regret it. Sebastian couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what she was saying. So I took the money, Iris whispered. I paid for my sister's surgery. And I ran. The room spun. Sebastian's father, the man who'd raised him with cold efficiency and colder affection. The man who died 3 years ago in his sleep, peaceful and unrepentant. That man had found Iris, threatened her, driven her away. And Sebastian had never known. How much? His voice came out hollow. How much did he pay you to leave? Iris's smile was bitter. $50,000. Enough to save my sister's life. Not enough to raise a child properly for 21 years, but I made it work. $50,000. Sebastian made that in the time it took to drink his morning coffee. His father had bought away the love of his life for the price of a used car. Sebastian couldn't move, couldn't speak. The revelation sat in his chest like a stone, heavy and immovable. His father, Edward Crowe, the man who'd taught him to shake hands firmly and never show weakness, who'd lectured him about legacy and bloodlines over expensive dinners, who'd smiled at his funeral as if death itself had been another merger he'd successfully negotiated. That man had destroyed everything. Say something. Iris's voice was small now, fragile. The fear had drained away, replaced by exhaustion that looked bone deep. I would have found you. The words came out raw. If I'd known, if I'd had any idea. That's why he made sure you didn't. Iris sank back against the pillows, and Sebastian saw how much even this conversation was costing her. He was very thorough. He had people watching me for the first 2 years. I'd see them sometimes, in parking lots or outside Ruby's daycare. Just watching, making sure I kept my end of the bargain. Ruby had gone pale. You never told me that. I never told you a lot of things, baby girl. Iris reached for her daughter's hand. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if you didn't know, you'd be safe. Sebastian finally moved, his legs carrying him to the chair beside the bed before they gave out completely. He was close enough now to see the details. The way cancer had hollowed out Iris's cheeks, the port in her chest where they'd pumped poison trying to save her, the wedding ring that wasn't there because she'd never married anyone else. Neither had he. I looked for you, he said quietly. Hired investigators. Called in favors. Spent a fortune trying to find any trace. He laughed, but it came out broken. I never thought to look in small-town Oregon. You always hated the rain. I learned to love it. Iris's eyes were fixed on his face, drinking him in like she was memorizing every line, every change. Rain is good for disappearing. Nobody looks too closely when everyone's hurrying to get inside. The nurse had left, satisfied that the crisis had passed. The machines had settled back into their steady rhythm, counting down the days Iris had left. 2 months, Ruby had said. Maybe less. Sebastian had found her just in time to lose her all over again. I built everything for you, he heard himself say. Every company, every deal, every success. I was trying to prove I was worth loving, that I could be enough. Sebastian, I named my first company Thorn Enterprises. Did you know that? My board thought I was crazy, choosing a name that had no connection to me. But it was connected. It was always connected to you. Iris's breath caught. You didn't. I did. And when it went public, when we hit our first billion, I stood on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and all I could think was that you weren't there to see it. That somewhere in the world, you'd moved on and forgotten me, and I was still. He stopped, his throat closing. Still what? Iris whispered. Still yours. The words hung between them. 15 years of longing compressed into 2 syllables. Ruby cleared her throat, breaking the moment. I'm going to get coffee. Or something. Give you two some privacy. She looked at Sebastian, and her expression was complicated. Anger and sympathy and something that might have been hope. 30 minutes. Then I'm coming back, and if she's upset, you leave. Deal. Deal, Sebastian said. The door clicked shut behind her. Alone. After 15 years, he was finally alone with Iris Thorne, and neither of them seemed to know how to start. You look good, Iris said finally, a hint of her old smile playing at her lips. Rich agrees with you. Don't. Sebastian's voice came out sharper than intended. Don't make jokes. Not about this. What else am I supposed to do? Cry? I've done enough of that to last several lifetimes. She shifted in the bed, wincing. Besides, I'm the one dying here. I think I've earned the right to deal with this however I want. There it was, the fire he remembered, buried beneath the illness and the years, but still burning. How long have you known, he asked. About the cancer. 2 years. Stage 4 pancreatic when they found it. I was supposed to be dead 18 months ago, but apparently I'm stubborn. She said it lightly, but Sebastian could see the truth in her eyes. She was terrified. I've been trying to make sure Ruby would be okay. Saved what I could, set up a trust with what little I have. She's got a scholarship to Portland State, starts in the fall. Or she would have if she wasn't about to lose her mother. Sebastian's hands curled into fists. Let me help. No. Iris. I said no. Her voice was firm despite its weakness. I didn't spend 15 years keeping her away from your world just to let you swoop in now, and my father's dead. That stopped her. What? 3 years ago. Heart attack in his sleep. Very peaceful, very dignified. Exactly how the bastard would have wanted to go. Sebastian leaned forward, needing her to understand. Whatever threat he posed, it's gone. The company's mine now. The family fortune, the influence, all of it mine. Which means Ruby is safe. She's always been safe, but especially now. Iris was shaking her head. You don't understand. It wasn't just your father. It was the whole machine around him. The lawyers, the board members, the society, people who would have looked at me and seen trash. I don't care what they see. Sebastian reached for her hand before he could stop himself, and when his fingers brushed her wrist, when he felt her pulse beneath the tattoo they'd gotten together, something electric shot through him. I care what I see. And I see the woman I've loved for 15 years lying in a hospital bed, dying, and our daughter thinks I'm some kind of monster because you were too scared to tell her the truth. The truth. Iris's eyes flashed. The truth is your father threatened to kill me if I didn't leave. The truth is I've spent 21 years looking over my shoulder, moving Ruby from school to school, working myself to exhaustion so she'd never have to know what poverty really looks like. The truth is I did everything right, and I'm still dying, and she's still alone, and you, her voice cracked. You're still here, after everything, looking at me like I'm not a ghost. You're not a ghost. Sebastian's grip tightened on her hand. You're real. You're here. And I'm not losing you again, do you understand? I don't care what it takes. The best doctors, experimental treatments, clinical trials. Sebastian, it's stage 4. There's nothing. There's always something. Money opens doors, Iris. You know that better than anyone. She was crying now, silent tears tracking down her hollow cheeks. Why are you doing this? Why can't you just let me die in peace? Because I love you. The words came out fierce, desperate. Because I've loved you since I was 23 years old, and that's never going to change. Because you gave me a daughter I didn't know existed, and I've already missed 21 years of her life. I'm not missing whatever time you have left. Iris stared at him, and for a moment, he saw past the illness to the girl she'd been, wild and brave and terrified of nothing except being trapped. I wanted to call you, she whispered. Every birthday, every Christmas, every time Ruby did something amazing. I wanted to tell you that you had a daughter who was smart and funny and so much like you it hurt to look at her sometimes. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid. Fresh tears spilled over. Afraid he'd make good on his threats. Afraid you'd hate me for leaving. Afraid that if you knew about Ruby, you'd fight for her, and I'd lose the only thing that made any of this worth it. Sebastian stood, moving closer to the bed until he could see the flecks of gold in her sea-glass eyes, until he could count the shallow breaths she took. I could never hate you, he said softly. And you're not losing anyone. Not Ruby. Not me. Not if I have anything to say about it. You can't fix this with money. Maybe not. But I can try. He pressed his lips to her forehead, gentle as a prayer. Let me try, Iris. Please. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch like she'd been starving for it. Okay, she breathed. Okay. The next 72 hours were a blur of phone calls, consultations, and medical files that Sebastian read until his eyes burned. He'd moved into a suite at the nicest hotel Portland had to offer, which wasn't saying much, and converted the living room into a makeshift war room. His assistant had flown in from Seattle with laptops, files, and enough caffeine to fuel a small army. By day 2, he'd contacted 17 oncologists across 3 continents. By day 3, he'd found hope. Dr. Chun is at Johns Hopkins, Sebastian explained, pacing Ruby's tiny apartment while she watched him with those unsettling familiar eyes. She's running a clinical trial for stage 4 pancreatic cancer patients. Immunotherapy combined with a targeted drug cocktail. The results have been. Mom said no. Ruby was curled in the corner of her threadbare couch, arms wrapped around her knees. She doesn't want experimental treatments. She said she's done fighting. Sebastian stopped pacing. She's giving up. She's tired. Ruby's voice cracked. Do you know what the last 2 years have been like? The chemo made her so sick she couldn't work. We lost our apartment. We've been living in an extended stay motel for 6 months because it's all we can afford. She's in pain every single day, and the morphine barely touches it anymore. The apartment was indeed small, a studio, really, with a kitchenette that probably violated health codes and a bathroom door that didn't quite close all the way. But it was clean. Ruby had made it a home with string lights and secondhand furniture and photographs covering every surface. Photographs of Iris. Of Ruby at various ages, gap-toothed and grinning, teenage and sullen, graduating high school in a too-big gown. But none of Sebastian. He'd been erased from their history as thoroughly as his father had intended. I can't watch her die, Sebastian said quietly. Not now? Not when I just found her. Ruby's expression softened slightly. You really love her, don't you? Even after everything. Even after everything. She studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Dr. Chun. Johns Hopkins. What are the odds? 40% response rate in trial participants. 20% achieve partial remission. 5%. 5% full remission. It's better than zero. Ruby stood, moving to the window that overlooked a parking lot and a chain restaurant. She won't go? You know that, right? She'll say it's too expensive, too far, too much hope for something that probably won't work. Then we convince her. Sebastian pulled out his phone. Together. Why would she listen to me? I'm just the kid she's been protecting her whole life. You're not just anything. Sebastian moved beside her, and for the first time, he really looked at his daughter. Ruby had Iris's eyes and cheekbones, but she had his stubborn jaw and the way he tilted his head when he was thinking. She was theirs, a perfect combination of two people who'd loved each other before the world got in the way. You're the reason she survived 15 years on her own. You're the reason she kept fighting when anyone else would have given up. And you're the only person in the world she loves more than her own fear. Ruby's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to lose her. Neither do I. Sebastian's voice roughened. So let's make sure we don't. They went to the hospital together the next morning. Iris was awake when they arrived, sitting up slightly with a breakfast tray she hadn't touched. She looked worse than she had 3 days ago. Or maybe Sebastian was just seeing more clearly now. The shadows under her eyes had deepened. Her hands trembled when she reached for the water cup. You two look conspiratorial, she said, attempting lightness. Should I be worried? Yes, Ruby said, pulling a chair close. Because we're staging an intervention. Iris's smile faded. Ruby, there's a clinical trial at Johns Hopkins, Sebastian cut in, moving to the other side of the bed. Dr. Lisa Chun is one of the leading researchers in pancreatic cancer treatment. She's had success with cases like yours, stage 4, metastatic, patients who've exhausted other options. Sebastian, we talked about this. No, you shut me down before we could talk about it. He pulled out his tablet, showing her the data he'd compiled. Charts, graphs, success stories. Look at these numbers. Look at these people. They were where you were 6 months ago, and now they're in remission. Iris glanced at the screen, then looked away. And how much does this miracle cost? That's not. How much, Sebastian? He hesitated. The trial itself is free. But the travel, the accommodations in Baltimore, the follow-up care. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Iris's laugh was bitter. I don't have that kind of money. I barely have enough saved for Ruby's first semester at Portland State. I have it. Sebastian set the tablet down. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, Iris. Let me use it for something that actually matters. No. Her voice was firm. I won't be your charity case. Charity. Sebastian felt his temper flare. You're the mother of my child. You're the woman I've loved for 15 years. This isn't charity. It's me taking care of my family. The word hung in the air. Family. Iris's composure cracked. We're not your family. We're the people your father paid to disappear. We're the mistake you didn't know you made. Mom, stop. Ruby's voice cut through sharp and clear. Just stop. Iris turned to her daughter, surprised. You've spent my entire life protecting me, Ruby continued, and Sebastian could hear her voice shaking. Moving us around. Working yourself to exhaustion. Sacrificing everything so I could be safe and happy and normal. You did that because you love me, right? Of course. Then let me protect you for once. Ruby grabbed her mother's hand. Let us fight for you the way you've fought for me. Please, Mom. I can't lose you. Not when there's a chance, even a small one, that you could stay. Iris was crying now, silent tears that she didn't bother wiping away. Baby girl, the odds. Screw the odds. Ruby's grip tightened. You taught me that. You told me that when everyone said we couldn't make it, when the bills were overdue and we were living in that car, you said the only odds that matter are the ones you make yourself. Sebastian watched mother and daughter and felt something shift in his chest. This was what he'd missed. 21 years of moments like this, fierce and tender and completely real. She's right, he said softly. The Iris I knew never gave up on anything. She was the girl who crashed a country club party in a thrift store dress and told my father to his face that his money didn't impress her. She was the girl who got a compass tattoo because she said it would always point her home. He paused. Where's that girl now? Iris met his eyes, and something sparked there, a flicker of the fire he remembered. She's tired, Iris whispered. Then rest. Sebastian moved closer. But don't give up. Not yet. Not when we just found each other again. The machines beeped steadily. Outside the window, Portland drizzle painted the glass gray. Inside this small hospital room, 3 people who should have been a family 15 years ago held their breath and waited. Finally, Iris spoke. If I do this, if I go to Baltimore and try this treatment, I need something from both of you. Anything, Sebastian and Ruby said in unison. I need you to promise me that if it doesn't work, if I get worse instead of better, you'll let me go. Her voice was steady now, clear. No heroic measures. No keeping me alive on machines just because you can't accept the inevitable. If this is my last chance, I want to take it on my terms. Deal. Sebastian's throat tightened. But he nodded. Deal. Deal, Ruby echoed. Iris took a shaky breath. Okay then. She looked at Sebastian, really looked at him for the first time since he'd walked back into her life. Call your Dr. Chen. Let's see if she can work miracles. Sebastian pulled out his phone, but before he could dial, Iris caught his wrist, the one with the compass tattoo. Sebastian? Yeah. Thank you. Her voice broke. For not forgetting me. He covered her hand with his. Never. Not for a single day. Dr. Lisa Chun was brilliant, methodical, and brutally honest. The cancer has metastasized to her liver and lungs, she said, pulling up scans on the lightboard in her Johns Hopkins office. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't accept a patient this advanced into the trial. But her overall health prior to diagnosis was good, and her response to the initial treatment protocol has been unexpected. Sebastian leaned forward. They'd been in Baltimore for 3 weeks now. 3 weeks of tests and consultations, and watching Iris endure procedures that left her weak and nauseous. 3 weeks of living in a furnished apartment near the hospital with Ruby, learning how to be a father to a daughter who was still deciding if she could trust him. Unexpected how, he asked. The preliminary markers are encouraging. Her tumor burden hasn't decreased yet, but it hasn't increased either. For stage 4 pancreatic cancer, stability is significant. Dr. Chin closed the file. However, I need to be clear about something. This treatment is aggressive. The side effects can be severe, more severe than anything she experienced with traditional chemo. There will be days when she wishes we'd never started. She understands that. Does she? Or is she doing this because you two are pressuring her? The question landed like a punch. Sebastian sat back, stung. I would never. I've seen it before, Mr. Crow. Dr. Chin's voice was gentle but firm. Family members who can't let go. Who push patients into treatments that extend suffering without extending life. You need to ask yourself, are you doing this for her or for you? The words haunted Sebastian for the rest of the day. By week 5, Iris was declining. The treatment was working. The scans showed marginal improvement, tumors shrinking by millimeters, but the cost was devastating. She couldn't keep food down. Her hair fell out again, this time in clumps that left her scalp raw and tender. The neuropathy in her hands and feet made it hard to walk, hard to hold a cup, hard to do anything without pain. I want to stop, she told Sebastian one night, her voice a rasp in the dim hospital room. He was sitting in the chair he'd claimed as his own, the one where he spent every night watching her sleep, terrified she'd slip away when he wasn't looking. The doctors said. I don't care what the doctors said. Iris's eyes were hollow. I can't do this anymore. Every day, I wake up feeling worse than the day before. This isn't living, Sebastian. This is surviving, and I'm not even doing that well. Fear clawed at his chest. Just give it more time. Dr. Chun said the worst of the side effects should peak around week 6. And then what? I feel slightly less awful while cancer eats me alive. She turned her head away. I should have stayed in Portland. At least there I could die in peace. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. Her voice cracked. I made a mistake coming here. I let you both convince me there was hope. And now I'm putting Ruby through watching me suffer, just so you can feel like you did something. The accusation hit its mark. Sebastian flinched. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. Iris's sudden rage startled them both. You got to spend 15 years building empires and sleeping in silk sheets while I worked 3 jobs and raised our daughter in motel rooms. Your father got to die peacefully while I'm drowning in my own body. And now you want me to keep fighting because you need me to? Because you can't handle losing me again. Iris, get out. She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her wasted face. Just get out. I can't look at you right now. Sebastian stood, his world tilting. I'm not leaving you. I said get out. A nurse appeared in the doorway, alerted by the monitors. Is everything okay? No, Iris choked out. Make him leave. Please. Sebastian looked at the nurse, at Iris, at the machines keeping her alive. Dr. Chin's words echoed in his head. Are you doing this for her? Or for you? He left. Ruby found him in the hospital chapel at 2 in the morning. She's sleeping, his daughter said, sliding into the pew beside him. They gave her something for the pain and the anxiety. Sebastian stared at the plain cross on the wall. He wasn't religious, hadn't been since he was a child, but he'd found himself here more nights than he could count, bargaining with a god he didn't believe in. She wants to stop treatment, he said. I know. She told me. I can't let her give up, Ruby. If she stops now, she dies. Ruby's voice was flat. Yeah, I got that part. But have you considered that maybe she's right? Maybe we're being selfish keeping her here. Sebastian's head snapped toward her. You don't mean that. Don't I? Ruby's eyes, Iris's eyes, were red-rimmed from crying. I've watched her suffer for 3 weeks, Dad. 3 weeks of torture disguised as hope. And for what? So the tumors can shrink by a few millimeters? So she can live another month, maybe 2, in agony? The word Dad hit him like a freight train. She'd been calling him Sebastian since they met. This was the first time she'd used the title, and it came wrapped in accusation. You don't understand, he said desperately. I just got her back. I can't lose her now. I can't. This isn't about you. Ruby's voice rose, echoing in the empty chapel. This is about a woman who's in pain every single second of every single day. This is about her life, not your guilt about missing the last 15 years. That's not what this is, isn't it? Ruby stood, and suddenly she looked so much older than 21. You want to save her so you can make up for lost time. So you can prove you're not like your father. So you can be the hero who fixed everything with money and connections and sheer force of will. But you know what? Some things can't be fixed. Some things just are. Sebastian felt something crack inside him. So what? I'm supposed to just let her die? Accept it and move on? I'm saying you should ask her what she wants. Actually listen to her answer. And if she says she's done fighting, you need to respect that. Ruby's voice broke. Because she's not yours to save, Dad. She never was. She's her own person, and she gets to decide how this ends. She left him there, alone with the cross and the silence and the terrible realization that she might be right. Sebastian returned to Iris's room as dawn broke over Baltimore. She was awake, staring out the window at the pink-gold sky. When she heard him enter, she didn't turn. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for pushing you, for making this about what I needed instead of what you needed. I'm dying, Sebastian. Her voice was empty. That's what I need you to understand. The treatment might buy me time, but it won't save me. And I'm so tired of pretending it will. He moved to her bedside, his heart breaking with every step. Then what do you want? Tell me, and I'll make it happen. Iris finally looked at him, and in her eyes, he saw the truth she'd been holding back. I want to go home, she whispered. I want to see the ocean one more time. I want to spend whatever time I have left with Ruby somewhere beautiful, somewhere peaceful. Not in this hospital room, not hooked up to machines, not fighting a war I can't win. Oregon. No. A sad smile. Somewhere we've never been. Somewhere with no memories of running or hiding or being afraid. Somewhere I can just be. Sebastian's vision blurred. This was it. The moment where he had to choose between his need to fix things and her need for peace. Okay, he said, his voice breaking. Okay, where do you want to go? Iris closed her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, she looked almost at peace. Somewhere with stars, she said. I want Ruby to remember me under stars. Sebastian rented a house on the coast of Big Sur. Not a house, really an estate. Perched on cliffs overlooking the Pacific, with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the ocean like a living painting. 3 bedrooms, a chef's kitchen that Iris would never use, and a deck where you could see stars so bright they looked close enough to touch. He'd had it outfitted with everything Dr. Chun recommended. Hospital bed, oxygen concentrator, enough morphine to keep Iris comfortable. A hospice nurse named Maria who moved into the guest house and spoke in soft Spanish when she thought no one was listening. They'd been there for 5 days when everything changed. Ruby was in the kitchen making tea when Sebastian found her. She'd been different since Baltimore, quieter, more withdrawn. The weight of watching her mother die was crushing her, and Sebastian didn't know how to help. Didn't know how to be a father to a girl he'd just met, especially when they were both losing the woman who connected them. She's asking for you, Ruby said without turning around. Both of us, actually. Sebastian's stomach dropped. This was it. The conversation they'd all been avoiding. Iris was going to tell them she was ready to go, that she wanted them to increase the morphine, let her slip away peacefully. He wasn't ready, would never be ready, but he followed Ruby to the master bedroom anyway. Iris was sitting up, actually sitting up without help, and there was color in her cheeks that hadn't been there yesterday. She'd wrapped a silk scarf around her head, the deep blue one Ruby had bought her at a tourist shop in Carmel. In the golden afternoon light streaming through the windows, she almost looked like herself again. Sit, she said, patting the bed. Both of you. They obeyed. Sebastian on one side, Ruby on the other, bracketing her like bookends. I need to tell you something, Iris began, and Sebastian braced himself. Something I should have said 15 years ago, something I should have said in Baltimore, something I've been too scared to admit even to myself. Ruby reached for her mother's hand. Mom, I'm not giving up. Iris's voice was stronger than it had been in weeks. I thought I was ready to die. I thought I'd made peace with it. But sitting here, watching the ocean, having both of you with me. She looked at Sebastian, and her eyes were clear, focused. I want to fight. Not with treatments that make me wish I was dead, but with whatever time I have left. I want to live, Sebastian. Really live. For the first time in 15 years. Sebastian couldn't breathe. What are you saying? I'm saying I wasted so much time being afraid. Afraid of your father, afraid of being found, afraid of letting myself be happy because I thought it would be taken away. Iris turned to Ruby. I gave you a good life, baby girl. I know I did. But I could have given you a better one if I hadn't been so busy running. You did the best you could, Ruby whispered. Did I? Or did I let fear make my decisions? Iris looked between them. Edward Crowe has been dead for 3 years. 3 years I could have reached out, could have told you about Ruby, could have stopped hiding. But I didn't, because fear is a habit, and habits are hard to break. Sebastian found his voice. You're breaking it now. I'm trying. Iris squeezed both their hands. Dr. Chun called this morning. The latest scans, the ones they took before we left Baltimore, they showed something. Sebastian's heart stopped. What did they show? The tumors are shrinking. Not just by millimeters anymore. The one on my liver is down by 30%. The lung lesions are smaller. My markers are dropping. Iris's smile was tremulous. She said if the trend continues, I might qualify for surgical intervention in 3 months. The world tilted. Surgery? But I thought. So did I? But apparently, my body decided to respond to treatment after all, just when I'd given up on it. Iris laughed, and it sounded almost like her old laugh, bright and surprised and full of wonder. Dr. Chin said it's rare, but not impossible. That sometimes the body needs time to adjust before it starts fighting back. Ruby was crying. You're going to be okay? I don't know. Maybe. The odds are still terrible, and surgery is risky, and there are no guarantees. Iris pulled them both closer. But I have a chance. A real chance. And I'm not wasting it wishing I was dead. Sebastian felt something break open in his chest. Not the shattering of hope, but the breaking of a dam. 15 years of grief and guilt and longing poured out of him in a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You scared me, he managed. You said you wanted to stop. You said. I was tired and in pain and convinced I was dying anyway. Iris touched his face, and her hand was steady. But Maria's been managing my symptoms better. The pain is bearable now. And waking up here, with the ocean and the sky and both of you, it reminded me what I was fighting for. Us, Ruby said softly. Us. Iris nodded. I spent 15 years protecting you from a threat that doesn't exist anymore. I think it's time I let you protect me instead. Sebastian pulled them both into his arms, careful of Iris's fragility, mindful of the 4 ports still in her chest. They sat like that for a long time, 3 people who should have been a family from the start, finally allowing themselves to believe in second chances. That night, after Ruby had gone to bed, Sebastian found Iris on the deck. She was wrapped in blankets despite the warmth, staring up at the stars she'd asked for. The morphine pump was beside her, but she hadn't touched it in hours. The pain was still there, would always be there until the tumors were gone, but she was managing it with a fierceness that reminded him of the girl she'd been. Can't sleep? He asked, settling into the chair beside her. Don't want to waste time sleeping. Iris glanced at him. We have 15 years to catch up on. We have time now. Maybe. She returned her gaze to the stars. Or maybe I'll relapse tomorrow and none of this will matter. That's the thing about cancer. It teaches you to live in the present because the future is never guaranteed. Sebastian reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. Then let's make the present count. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the ocean crash against the cliffs below. Finally, Iris spoke again. I loved you, the whole time. Every day in every motel room and cheap apartment and night in the car. I loved you so much it hurt. Past tense. Sebastian's voice was rough. Iris turned to look at him, and in the starlight, she was beautiful. Not despite the illness, but somehow because of it, stripped down to her essential self. No more armor, no more hiding. No, she said softly. Present tense. I love you. Still. Always. Sebastian leaned forward, cupping her face in his hands. I'm going to marry you. Sebastian. I'm going to marry you, he repeated. And we're going to fight this thing together. And when you beat it, and you will beat it, we're going to have the life we should have had 15 years ago. Deal. Iris laughed through tears. That's a terrible proposal. Then I'll do it better later. With a ring and champagne and whatever romantic gesture you want. He pressed his forehead to hers. But right now, in this moment, I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Not again. Not ever. Even if I die. Even then. I'll love you through death and whatever comes after. His voice broke. You're it for me, Iris. You always have been. She kissed him then, soft and sweet, and tasting of salt water and hope. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. Really smiling, for the first time since he'd found her. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's fight. 3 months later, Iris walked into the surgical suite at Johns Hopkins under her own power. Sebastian wasn't allowed past the prep area. He stood behind the glass, watching as they positioned her on the table, as Maria, who'd insisted on coming back for this, held her hand until the anesthesia took effect. Ruby was beside him, gripping his arm so hard he'd have bruises. She's going to be okay, Ruby whispered, like a prayer. Sebastian didn't answer. Couldn't. The surgery would take 8 hours minimum. 8 hours of removing tumors from her liver and lungs, of reconstruction and hoping they'd gotten clean margins. Dr. Chun had been cautiously optimistic, but she'd also made them sign 17 different consent forms acknowledging all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. Mr. Crow, a nurse appeared beside them. Dr. Chin asked me to take you to the family waiting area. It's more comfortable, and there's coffee. Sebastian didn't want comfort or coffee. He wanted to stand here and watch every second, as if his presence alone could keep Iris alive. But Ruby tugged his arm, and he let himself be led away. Hour 1. They sat in silence, unable to focus on magazines or television. Hour 2. Ruby fell asleep against his shoulder, exhausted from the early morning flight from California. Hour 3. Sebastian paced, made phone calls he didn't remember, stared at the tattoo on his wrist, and remembered getting it with Iris in a dingy shop near campus. How she'd laughed when he'd flinched at the needle. Hour 4. A different nurse brought updates. Surgery is proceeding as expected. Dr. Chin will come speak with you when she's finished. Hour 5. Ruby woke up. They ordered sandwiches neither of them ate. Hour 6. Sebastian broke down in the bathroom where no one could see him, pressed his forehead against the cold tile, and begged to God he still didn't believe in to please let her survive this. Hour 7, another update. Still going well. Dr. Chun is working on the lung resection now. Hour 8, nothing. No updates. No word. Just silence that stretched like torture. Hour 9. Hour 10. At hour 11, Dr. Chin finally appeared in the doorway, still in her surgical scrubs. There was blood on her shoes. Her expression was unreadable. Sebastian stood so fast he nearly knocked over his chair. Is she? She's alive. Dr. Chin's face broke into a smile. She's alive, and the surgery was a success. The room spun. Ruby grabbed his hand, and he realized she was crying, laughing, making sounds that didn't quite form words. We removed 3 tumors from her liver and 2 from her lungs, Dr. Chun continued. The margins were clear, cleaner than I hoped, honestly. There's no evidence of remaining disease, though we won't know for certain until pathology comes back, and we do follow-up scans in 6 weeks. No evidence of disease, Sebastian repeated numbly. She's cancer-free? Right now, in this moment, yes. But pancreatic cancer is aggressive. The recurrence rate is high, and she'll need close monitoring for the rest of her life. Scans every 3 months, blood work every 6 weeks. If it comes back, we fight again, Ruby said fiercely. But right now, she's okay? Right now, she's okay. Dr. Chin's smile widened. She's in recovery. Another hour or so, and you can see her. Iris was groggy and pale when they finally wheeled her to a private room, but she was alive. The relief Sebastian felt seeing her chest rise and fall was so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. Hey, she murmured, her voice thick from the breathing tube. Did I die? No. Ruby was beside her instantly, careful not to jostle any of the tubes and wires. You made it, Mom. Clean margins. No evidence of disease. Seriously? Iris's eyes widened, suddenly more alert. I'm not dying. Not today. Sebastian moved to her other side, taking the hand that wasn't connected to N4. Not for a very long time, if I have anything to say about it. Iris stared at both of them, and then she started laughing, a sound that turned into coughing that made the nurses rush over with concern. But when they settled her, when the pain meds kicked in and she could breathe again, she was still smiling. I really thought this was it, she said. I thought I'd say goodbye in that prep room. Well, you didn't. Sebastian brought her hand to his lips. You fought, and you won. We won. Iris corrected, looking at Ruby. All of us. Ruby was crying again, but this time from joy. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby girl. Iris turned to Sebastian, and her sea-glass eyes were bright. And you. I love you too. I know. Sebastian leaned down, pressing his lips to her forehead. I've always known. They stayed like that, the 3 of them, until the nurses shooed Sebastian and Ruby out so Iris could rest. But before they left, Iris called them back. Sebastian, remember what you said about a proper proposal. His heart stuttered. Iris, you just had major surgery. We can talk about this when. I want to talk about it now. She struggled to sit up slightly, wincing. Because I've spent 15 years running from happiness, and I'm done. So ask me. Right now? In this hospital room with the terrible lighting and the beeping machines. Ask me. Sebastian looked at Ruby, who was grinning through her tears and nodding emphatically. He didn't have a ring, didn't have champagne or flowers or any of the romantic gestures he'd planned. All he had was 15 years of love and a second chance he'd never thought he'd get. So he took Iris's hand, the one with the compass tattoo that matched his, and he asked, Iris Thorne, will you marry me? Will you let me spend whatever time we have, whether it's 50 years or 5, making up for the ones we lost? Will you let me be Ruby's father officially? Will you trust me enough to stop running and start living? Iris didn't hesitate. Yes. Yes. Yes, you idiot. I've been yours since I was 22 years old. I'm not stopping now. Sebastian kissed her, careful of the oxygen cannula and the stitches and the fragility that was slowly, miraculously, giving way to strength. When he pulled back, Ruby was recording them on her phone, tears streaming down her face. What? Sebastian asked. I'm documenting this, Ruby said. For the grandkids. Grandkids. Iris raised an eyebrow. Let's get through the wedding first. And college, Ruby added. And maybe a couple years of you being healthy. But yeah, eventually. Grandkids. They all laughed, and in that moment, in that sterile hospital room with machines beeping and nurses bustling and the future stretching out uncertain but possible, they were finally, completely, a family. The pathology report came back a week later. Clean margins, no remaining cancer cells detected. The 6-week scan showed the same, no evidence of disease. At 3 months, still clear. At 6 months, Dr. Chen used the word Sebastian had been afraid to hope for, remission. It could come back, she warned, as she always did. You need to stay vigilant. We will, Iris promised, squeezing Sebastian's hand. And they did. But they also lived. The wedding took place on the cliffs of Big Sur, exactly 1 year after Iris had asked to see the stars. She wore a simple white dress that Ruby had helped her choose, and flowers in her hair that had grown back thick and auburn with only a few silver threads. No veil, no elaborate ceremony. Just 50 people who mattered, standing on the deck of the house that had become their home, watching the sun set over the Pacific. Sebastian couldn't take his eyes off her. You're staring, Iris whispered as they stood at the makeshift altar. Really just an arbor covered in wildflowers that Ruby and Maria had constructed that morning. I'm memorizing, he corrected. Every detail, every moment. The officiant cleared his throat. He was a friend of Dr. Chen's, someone who'd seen enough death to appreciate the miracle of 2 people getting a second chance. We're gathered here today, he began, and Sebastian heard the words but didn't process them. All he could focus on was Iris, alive, healthy, here. Her latest scan had been clear. 3 months cancer-free, then 6, then 9, now a full year, and Dr. Chun was cautiously using words like excellent prognosis and long-term survival. Sebastian, Iris's voice brought him back. Your vows. Right. His vows. He'd written them down, revised them 17 times, but now, looking at her, all the carefully chosen words disappeared. I lost you once, he said simply, and I spent 15 years half alive, building things that didn't matter, succeeding at everything except the only thing that ever counted. He took both her hands, feeling the matching tattoos pressed together. You came back to me, or I found you. However we want to tell the story, the point is we're here. And I promise you, Iris, I will never take a single day for granted. Every morning I wake up next to you is a gift. Every fight we have, every laugh, every quiet moment, it's all more than I thought I'd ever get. Iris was crying, but she was smiling too. You're not supposed to make me cry. I did my makeup. Sorry. He wasn't sorry at all. My turn. Iris took a breath. Sebastian Crow, you are the most stubborn, impossible, ridiculously optimistic man I've ever met. When I told you I was dying, you said no. When I said there was no hope, you found some anyway. When I tried to give up, you wouldn't let me. She squeezed his hands. You gave me back my life. Not just by paying for treatments or finding the best doctors, though you did that too, but by reminding me what I was living for. You and Ruby, you're my North Star. My compass home. The officiant was dabbing at his own eyes now. Do you, Sebastian Crow, take Iris Thorne to be your wife? I do. Forever. And do you, Iris Thorne, take Sebastian Crow to be your husband? I do. Finally. Then by the power vested in me by the state of California, I now pronounce you. Wait. Ruby stepped forward from her place as maid of honor. Before you finish, I have something to say. Iris turned. Baby girl, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. Ruby looked at Sebastian, and he saw her nervousness, her hope. I've been thinking about something for a while now. And with you two getting married, making it official, I want to make it official too. Sebastian's heart started pounding. I want to change my name, Ruby said. Legally. From Ruby Thorne to Ruby Crow. She swallowed hard. If that's okay with you. Both of you. Iris made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. Sebastian couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. His daughter, and she was his daughter, had been from the moment he'd seen her sea glass eyes in that diner, wanted his name. Wanted to claim him as publicly as he'd been claiming her in his heart for the past year. Ruby, he finally managed, his voice wrecked. Nothing would make me happier. Even though I'm 22 and should probably be past the age where I care about this stuff. Especially because you're 22 and choosing it anyway. Sebastian held out his arm, and Ruby crashed into him, into both of them. And suddenly all three were holding each other and crying while their guests applauded, and someone, probably Maria, was definitely taking pictures. The officiant waited patiently until they separated. May I continue? They nodded, laughing through tears. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Sebastian cupped Iris's face in his hands, seeing past the makeup and flowers to the girl he'd fallen in love with 15 years ago, to the woman who'd survived everything the world had thrown at her, to the future they were finally going to build together. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too," she whispered back. And then he kissed her, and the sunset exploded in gold and pink behind them. And somewhere in the crowd, Ruby was cheering, and it was perfect. 2 years later, Ruby Crowe graduated from Stanford with a degree in oncology research. "Because of you," she told her mother at the celebration dinner. "Because I watched you fight, and I want to help other people fight too." Iris's eyes filled with tears, happy ones this time. 2 years in remission. The scans kept coming back clear. Dr. Chun had started using the word cured, though she always added cautiously. But Iris felt cured, felt alive in ways she hadn't since she was 22, and the world seemed full of possibilities. Sebastian had stepped back from his company, promoting his COO and taking a role as chairman that let him work remotely. They split their time between Big Sur and a penthouse in San Francisco where Ruby was doing her graduate work. The rest of the Crowe family, Sebastian's mother, his 2 sisters, had been slowly integrated into their lives, though Iris still sometimes struggled with the wealth and privilege that came with the name. "You'll get used to it," Sebastian's mother had said at their first awkward dinner. "I don't want to get used to it," Iris had replied. "I want to remember where I came from." And she did. They'd established a foundation in Ruby's name, providing support for single mothers trying to escape poverty. Iris ran it herself, working with the same fierce determination she'd brought to surviving. "You're changing the world," Sebastian told her one evening as they sat on their deck watching the stars. "I'm trying to make sure no one else has to run the way I did," Iris corrected. "That's different. Still counts." They sat in comfortable silence, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest. The compass tattoos on their wrists were faded now, the ink softened by time, but they were still there, still pointing them home to each other. "Do you ever regret it?" Iris asked quietly. "The 15 years we lost." Sebastian considered the question. "I regret that we lost them," he said finally. "But I don't regret where they brought us. Ruby is who she is because of the life you gave her. I'm who I am because of what I built trying to forget you. And now we're here, together, with all that experience and growth and love that might not have existed if things had been different." "That's very philosophical of you. I've had time to think about it." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Besides, we have the rest of our lives to make up for it. 50 years minimum. 50 years, at least. Dr. Chen says you're her prize patient. Says you'll probably outlive both of us out of sheer stubbornness." Iris laughed, and the sound was pure joy. "Then I better make them count." "We better make them count," Sebastian corrected. And they did. There it is, beautiful people. A story about love that survived everything. Secrets, distance, illness, fear, and 15 years of separation. If this journey moved you, if you felt every twist and turn, do me a favor, drop a comment telling me your favorite part. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like this are what we do here, and I want you along for the next one. Where are you watching from? What time is it where you are? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, remember that second chances are real, love can survive anything, and sometimes the best stories are the ones where everyone gets their happy ending. See you in the next one.